Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Right here on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook Live or wherever you're watching. Revolution Radio Network brings you NJRR Live. And my name is Brian Powers, and I'm your host. And thank you for tuning in tonight. And tonight I'm going to wrap with our comrade, Christian Perez. He'll be on in a minute. And if you've never tuned into our program before, we try to highlight activist struggles from the grassroots perspective. And tonight on the program, we're going to take a look at some issues that have been in the news, but of course, I have never really been happy ever since starting to work in independent media, with what I see in mainstream media. It is in stark contrast sometimes to what I've viewed on the ground as an activist, and what's portrayed in the media has shown me that the media in this country is dishonest. And I think that we've got an example of Cuba going on right now, which to me is bordering on the bizarre when it comes to the level of propaganda. But I don't know if that's in the American consciousness yet. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we get into all that, I did want to talk to my audience about, how activism works. And I was listening to a special panel discussion between a couple of people on the academic left, and there was a representative of the Cato Institute. So obviously a right-wing guy, and I listened to it. And at first I was, really kind of appalled by the capitalist argument. And it was very much individualistic, as you might imagine. And they posed a question to them, and they said, well, what do you say to somebody who's been beaten up by the system, who suffered from racism, or, been basically treated poorly by the system, when they question it? And his answer was, kind of pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and help them get them, be as successful as you can in the current system, and really don't complain about the system, because it is what it is, and this is as good as it gets. And when I first heard it, I was like, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's fine to help individuals, and I think your activism should be based in helping individuals. And coming from the union movement, I got to represent union members and represent them in cases as individuals, so I get that part of it. But the lack of recognition of systemic oppression that came from him, was angering to me as a social justice activist, as a guy who brings attention to that wider world and says, listen, yeah, the deck is stacked against you if you're not rich, wealthy, come from a powerful or politically connected family. But I do encourage people to struggle against that system. And I think, part of my activism, it needs to turn, and it has turned more into, reminding people that, being poor and destitute yourself is not being an activist. Advocating for your cause and being healthy and being able to take care of yourself, in a way that you can represent people is, important. But then I listened to this interview again, and I listened to what he was communicating, not to me as an activist, but to the average person on the street. I mean, this was NPR. This wasn't my audience of a smaller group of revolutionaries who were firmly anti-capitalist, but he was really speaking to a person who hasn't been either exposed to or care for our political leanings. And to me, he sounded, and then I tried to kind of wipe my mind of being a lefty for a few minutes. And to me, he sounded, and when I was able to listen to that and hear what he was saying, to me, he sounded like a guy who was trying to help. He didn't sound like somebody who was promulgating right-wing capitalist ideology. He sounded like, quite frankly, some advice I've gotten through from family members, like kind of, stop feeling sorry for yourself, go out and get a job, get to work, do this, do that. It's not always bad advice. But it's important that I think we recognize where we are, and when we're saying what we're saying, how we put it. And one of the things I think the mistake made on the left-hand side of the argument, of course, that I guess you would think I would be on the more side of, did tend to be more academic and not rooted in, my experiences of working class people. The best activists out there can communicate with working class people. And it's very rare that you can maintain that ability to communicate with working class people if you aren't exposed to them. So the best activists are the ones that go to work every day in an ambulance as an EMT and then advocate for better healthcare standards, or somebody who actually swings a hammer for a living, advocating for people that work in carpentry, as opposed to the cousin of the brother or the lawyer who used to represent them. These are important aspects of activism that I hope this makes sense to you when you get into it, because there are these traps out there that draw you into circles of power. And you can wind up in these circles of power as if they're the whole world and the whole universe, but they're not. And if you want to represent people, you have to be amongst them. And so if you're newer to activism, if you're just getting involved because you see these social ills and you want to do something about it, I've always maintained to younger activists when I talk to them that they should stay out of the halls of power. Don't run into Trent. Don't run into your city hall. Don't get into that nonsense too early. And if you do get into that nonsense, it should be rare. You should be able to make a big impact, and you should bring proletariat with you. And you should be able to understand the definition of proletariat too. I'll leave you to look that up. But I really hope the message, of tonight's little monologue before we get into it, before I bring Christian here and talk about Cuba and these kind of specific issues, it's just a little piece of, from 20 years of organizing and working with people, that if you don't help individuals with their daily kind of lives, if you don't root yourself in something like what churches do by feeding people that need food, what unions do by representing the people on the job and getting them better standards of work and better levels of pay and benefits, if you don't do what mutual aid groups do, which is foster a community based on sharing resources. And I think that's like a newer development in the revolutionary communities that we can all kind of point to as helping people rather than just going and trying to affect policy. And they're not mutually exclusive ideas, because by helping people and showing that you have that connection with the working people, the proletariat, you will gain that political support. If you want to affect policy, if that's your path, okay, great. But you're not going to be able to do it for the greater good if you're not connected with the people who are affected by those policies. So that's that for tonight. And I'm going to bring in Christian Perez here now because I got lonely. Hi, Chris. How you doing?
Doing great. Doing great.
Good. So if I had an echo effect, I guess we would just say, I don't have one tonight because I'm not on my board. I'm doing the show from my phone tonight. But we would do something like,
I was in the exact same thing. The billionaires in space, like, I don't know what to say about it, because the more I look into it, the angrier I get. Right. What was it? You posted Whitey on the Moon. Right. Which is the most, I mean, Scott Heron of the Revolution Will Not Be Televised fame. That's obviously his biggest hit. But he wrote Whitey on the Moon. And it's, in a nutshell, the idea is rich people on the moon, living this sci-fi life. Everyday people, it says, a rat done bit my sister Nell. Right. Everyday people are having to pay bills. Billionaires are getting subsidies. They're paying very little in taxes. And, they want to go to space. They want space tourism. They want access to the resources there. And if you can get to the moon and get access to those resources, we're talking trillions, and trillions of dollars worth of resources in space.
Yeah, man. I mean, so that's, I mean, Is it advancing science though, or is it? I mean, I guess that's the argument they're making. Because
yes, but it's not advancing it for everyone, right? So we're obviously going to learn things, or NASA, whoever's involved, right? They're learning things from the technology. They're going into space. They're doing experiments out there. They're learning things, and that is good. The problem is we've put the control in the hands of these egotistical So very much like nuclear power, very much like genetically modified organisms, we now have space travel where there's nothing wrong with the idea of it. There's nothing wrong with it being collectively controlled. The problem is billionaires, corporate interests who want to cut corners, who are profit driven, them being in charge of the science.
Yeah, so I guess, if we start from the point of Gil Scott Heron's poem Whitey on the Moon, he was looking at a publicly funded space program, right? I mean, NASA was primarily a publicly funded entity, and I think it was actually, I don't know which president started it. It may have been Clinton. It may have been
NASA
Bush one. Well, no, I mean the privatization aspect of it. Because I think that, and it wasn't Reagan. Reagan, it was still publicly funded for the most part. It was post-Reagan that you saw this privatization, which is kind of like what we've done with technology in general, whether it be our communications systems. Al Gore did invent the internet and then, put it out to the public. So our public money goes into the investment, and then the returns on those investments are taken by a couple of billionaires who privatize it ultimately. And it makes you wonder now, like you said, these billions and trillions of dollars of resources that may be in outer space. What is the return on the investment for the people of the world? Because now we're talking about not just the United States that has gone into space and done space exploration, but many. I don't even want to start to list the number of countries that have been out there. I mean, there's hundreds of satellites in orbit. Chinese.
Yeah, I mean they have different programs. The EU publicly funded, India's program is publicly funded, and China's program is publicly funded. Right? China has designs on Mars. Like China wants to get to Mars. Now, as of now, from what I've seen. Now, I'm not an expert in space travel. I'm not a physicist or anything like that. But from what I've seen, as of right now, American technology is ahead of Chinese technology. But they are focused. They are more driven. And our space travel is right now at the whim of a bunch of billionaires. It's looking more like the movie Alien and it's like Star Trek. Right? The movie Alien, I think is it the second one? The second one, Aliens. There's a family that wants a claim on a mine, and they find a starship. The ones that get attacked by nuke the colony from space. But this is like it's driven by Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson and Elon Musk, and we're so desperate for heroes in this society that we turn to these billionaires. I was listening to, it was either Democracy Now! Today or yesterday, and these people have enough money to feed all the hungry people on this planet many times over. We can feed everyone. We could house everyone. We need to tax these people. We need to seize their assets, and we need to nationalize these industries. I mean, but when we went to space and we realized the Russians weren't getting us there, and we didn't need for the military, it was over.
I mean, I'm fine with the billionaires going into space. I guess my main problem is that they're returning.
Yeah, let them stay out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big issue. And I've also, espoused the conspiracy theory, and I've tried to catch it on that Elon Musk will be riding around a surfboard and trying to carve his name into the moon and blasting cities with high-powered lasers while Jeff Bezos wears some kind of outfit with like 8 arms on it. I really do think we're getting closer to that not being conspiracy theory. And
he becomes Hank Scorpio from The Simpsons, right? Builds the laser, threatens the planet. But
that's a great episode.
Yeah, I always try to win the Simpsons reference, but we need to stop idolizing these people, and we need collective power. I mean, the only thing that's going to save this country is collective power. We need people in the streets. We need to nationalize industries, to tax the hell out of these billionaires. We need to face a certain reality. I mean, when it comes to space travel, I don't feel comfortable with these people being in control, and I don't see that changing anytime soon because I don't have $1 billion. Unless you donate to njrevolutionradio.com/donate, and you can donate
There
to
you
me.
go. Yes, thank you for
Working
that plug. And speaking of people in the streets, there are people in the streets in America, very angry people from Cuba in North Jersey and Miami. In North Jersey, I have great familiarity with the background there. And then in Miami, are speaking out because the Cuban people want freedom, not vaccines or syringes or food or anything like that we could provide for them if we were to lift an embargo and normalize trade relations with our neighbor 90 miles to the south of us. But what they really want, Chris, what they want more than food or life itself is freedom. What the fuck are they talking about?
Yeah, I mean, so like, look, I want to press what I'm saying, acknowledging the fact that the Cuban presidency is not democratic in the way the United States sees democracy, right? There are human rights abuses in Cuba, abuses in the past of the LGBT community, abuse of dissidents, and as socialists, we favor, you know, popular assembly. We should favor the right of unions. We should favor free speech and all of that. Right. And important to preface that when we say that. There's a really good article by Dan Labatz, if you Google Dan Labatz, where he talks about how socialists should look at Cuba. Right. Now, being said, I defend the Cuban Revolution. I support the Cuban Revolution, and I think it's one of the best things for the area. Unfortunately, the embargo is choking Cuba. People do not understand what embargo means. So in a nutshell, the news so fast, right? We had the gate of hell open up and the Gulf of Mexico. We had any time for that, right? Everybody just kind of looked away for a week. But if you go back a couple months, remember that big ship that got caught in the Suez Canal? That ship is exactly. I forgot about it. That ship.
The Evergreen
left Egypt last week, right? These massive ships go all over the world, stopping different places, dropping off and picking up goods. The problem is how the embargo works. Because if that ship or any other ship wants to go to Cuba, they can go to Cuba and trade goods. The problem is Cuba doesn't have the market to buy these, A, and B, once the ship has gone to Cuba, it cannot go to the United States for a specified amount of time. So if you are Nike or Toshiba or you hats or boots or candles or what the heck it is you make, and you want to sell products to the United States, I mean, or to Cuba, you have to weigh those options. Am I going to sell my products to Cuba, the United States? Well, if I sell it to Cuba, there goes my chances of turning a profit for X amount of time. But if I sell my product into the United States, I've got access to that massive market, A, and B, my products can move on to the next port. Maybe they drop off goods in Brazil or Mexico or something like that. It economically choked country. So even though Cuba has create vaccines, they don't have the syringes to administer them. And the rhetoric we're seeing is people saying that the government is denying people these syringes. They don't have access to this. Long story short, this is the problem. It's people want freedom in Cuba. Yes, people are frustrated. We need to lift the embargo and let Cuban socialism have a chance. If you really wanted to defeat the Cuban government, if you wanted to defeat the Castros, lift the embargo. Flood Cuba with Coca-Cola. Flood Cuba with Levi Jeans.
I've taken some heat from people who say, you know, you're not from Cuba, and people. There are lots of people, particularly in North Jersey and areas where, you know, I organize and stuff, who are from Cuba. There are a lot of Cuban exiles in North Jersey. Bob Menendez, who's our state senator, made his political rise because of the Elian Gonzalez incident, which some of you may recall. You know, this boy.
Who's a party now, by the way.
He's they turned him into a Castro. Was like, oh, he turned him into, basically became Castro's son after that incident. But for those of you that may be a little younger than us, and Elian Gonzalez was a boy at the time. Was taken to America without his father's consent. There was a big international incident culminating in I don't know which was it the DEA? I forgot who raided
who it was, but basically Yeah, I mean, his mother died on the
they
trip.
came in and so they brought him in and they brought him back. So anyway,
Yeah.
but Bob Menendez made his political rise, you know, as a part of that movement, you know, and it solidified that Cuban community in North Jersey. Now,
Yeah.
most of that community is not African Cuban. You know, most of that community, when I find that I talk to them. Now, people say, well, you know, you're not from there, you don't understand. I do understand that I saw the stickers in the parking lots at the rallies, which are a mix of Bolsonaro and Cuban stickers. I do understand that, you know, just because you're of Cuban descent does not mean you have left-wing politics, and quite the contrary. In the Americas, it is the right-wing Cubans, the Cubans who supported the Batista regime originally, and who are the descendants of those people that were thrown off their plantations, that are basically just a bunch of crybabies who want their slaves back. They want their sugar plantations back, and they're tired of being told that they're, you know, that they were bad people, and they want to portray themselves as victims who were political exiles when they had plenty of wealth. They came to this country with plenty of wealth. They started their own businesses. They're well-to-do. These are not impoverished, poor Cubans who were kicked out by a tyrannical regime. These were originally Batista supporters who kept African Cubans on plantations working for slave-type wages in insufferable conditions. And now all those people have health care. Now on the political side of it, I think that the points that you brought up with are important to say that, you know, they're not as politically powerful as people in a republic, maybe, but I don't feel very powerful in our republic here.
Yeah, I mean,
so there are more social democratic like principles that could be at play in Cuba. But I will also say that, you know, that's a struggle in every society, and to describe it as like human rights violations because they only have so much access to Facebook, I guess you could say that. I feel that's an injustice, but it's a political rights. It's the political aspect of freedom. Whereas under the healthcare aspect of freedom, I would say they have more than us. You know, they have less of that political. So it's not this, but Cuban Americans or advocates in these communities or complete fraud criminals like Bob Menendez want to paint this black and white picture of this evil regime. Listen, goddammit, you can make the same fucking argument about our evil regime here in America, but you're not going to stop and have a conversation, a nuanced conversation about the political dynamics that goes on between our countries and why exiles are here and why they why they have these political restrictions is because of the interference that America would put into their political system.
We have talked about it
constantly. Can you blame them? Can you blame them for being afraid of American propaganda when I turn on the news and I see all this talk about how these brave Cubans are standing up to a tyrannical dictator as real news? It's not real news, and shame on ABC. And CNN is just like the big fucking.
I mean, CNN's posting photos of reporters calling them the dissident. I mean, we put it this way:
garbage.
Here we hear about police clamping down in places like Brazil. We hear about people losing eyes in places. I think it's in Colombia where people are losing eyes from beatings from the police. The Cuban police killing anybody, right? So like if the police were really shooting, like. I'm sure using tear gas, and I'm sure they're beating people. I'm not going to deny that. That's most likely what's happening, right? That's what we see. But they're not like shooting people, right? This coming out of the exile community. These people are that they want Americans to think that Cuba is some kind of hellscape, right? They're talking about intervention. We're looking at, like, we talk about hate next. Hate is an example of what happens when you intervene in a country. Destabilize and you overthrow government. We went through Vietnam. We just got out of Afghanistan after 20 years. We're in Iraq. Like the Cuban government, the Cuban revolution has a base of support that is not like any of these other places. These people will fight and they will die to defend their gains. Right. And I think the vast majority of Cubans are kind of stuck in the middle and they just want to get, like, their people. They just want to get through their day. But I say this to everyone. It doesn't matter who invaded. It doesn't matter where somebody comes into your neighborhood, into your country, invading, bombing your people. You're going to fight back. And I don't think Cubans want Americans. They know that neoliberalism, the current economic order, that will turn them into Haiti, that will turn them into Guatemala, right? We talk about the whole of Cuba. Why are people fleeing El Salvador every day? It's the same thing. Right, we want to talk communist hellscape, but we don't want to talk about what capitalism has done to literally every other country in America.
I think that, you know, looking at the media, and I've become more critical of the media as I understand more of it, because I haven't entered into media in a very traditional way. I didn't go to school for this or be a beat reporter to start. I came into it as an activist who, you know, got a big mouth. And but I do think it's important that what I put out there have standards, man. And I've taken down posts and changed errors on blogs and made mistakes and apologized on the air and done all those things. And what I'm seeing, and I mean, and as I get more absorbed and see the way, if you want to be critical of anything, I think that's fine. If you want to get on your airwaves and support whatever regime okay, good. But when you're not reporting facts, man, when you're showing fake pictures, CNN, you're showing fake pictures, man. What are you doing? This isn't you're tearing apart the fabric of democracy. You're saying that the people aren't going to make any decisions based on facts. We're going to fool them. We're going to pretend something is happening. Who does that? From the editor at his desk making that edit, to the producer, to the executives, to the advertisers. Shame on you. Shame on you. Stop tearing apart the honest people who are trying to do a good job of reporting in this world with your absolute garbage. Your garbage people. Stop doing it. Thank you. Okay. Go ahead.
No, I mean, but that's what it. I mean, this is the frustration of the mainstream media. People will, people will say, but like so let's stop and examine this, because these are the things we talk about here, right? This idea that CNN is somehow left wing or liberal news. No, CNN is corporate media. Period. I don't want to hear that they're liberal. Corporate media. When you are spreading misinformation about what's happening in other countries, and it's not just Cuba, it's not just CNN, right? But it damage, and especially after the past 4 years with all the talk about fake news and alternative facts, right? People do not trust the mainstream media. We need them to be good and to their best, but we don't see that, right? And they'll bring in, former generals, former businessmen and women, former State Department officials. These are they'll bring in. But, God forbid you bring in someone who's an expert on, like, who can look through your pictures and say, no, these are supporters of the revolution. These are not. But it's where we're at.
And it's also, I think it's why the world just isn't going to respect America as much, and why you're seeing, this fear of China. Yeah. It shouldn't be fear, first off, to see somebody. It's honestly like, you think about somebody getting jealous that your friend is succeeding. Like, rather than congratulate them and help them be successful, we'd rather hate on the successes of another nation, because it somehow, could mess with our status as a world power. I don't care about our status as a world power. I just want to have a house to feed my family in, so, I think, but when we act like this, the world knows Cuba's political situation. The United Nations looks at Cuba and understands the good and the bad, and this conversation that could be had about relations with our neighbor 90 miles to the south. But, so we look dumb. They see these reports. They hear this rhetoric. They look at us and they have, quite frankly, although and why I'm not a politician is because I just out and out curse about it. But believe me, when ambassadors and representatives of other nations see this garbage on our airwaves, that leaves an impression with them too. And it's lowered our standing in the world, our policy, not just to Cuba, and we can talk about Haiti here in a couple of minutes, I'll lump South America in with that as a whole. We've talked about Brazil and Venezuela and all these other Nicaragua, Panama. The list goes on.
I mean, and that's what it is. It's war on the region, right? We're talking. Trump enacted 200 sanctions on Cuba in the 4 years. Biden hasn't lifted any of them. Biden hasn't even gone back to what we were doing during the Obama administration, because we could travel for those 8 years while Obama was president. But we can't do that now. I mean, look, George Carlin said it's a big club and you ain't in it, right? Like Joe Biden, Donald Trump is a scumbag and a lowlife, but Joe Biden is the same old song dance, right? This is Joe. This is we're back, baby. This is America's back, right?
I don't know what Joe's doing. Joe don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to rock the boat.
Well, we had when we had Phil Hickel on, he compared Biden to LJ. And Biden was going to try and his shine or get his focus from domestic policies, which he's not really fighting, as opposed to his foreign policy, right? Johnson wasn't really that great on foreign policy. But, Biden's going to be the same old song dance. So that means servitude for Latin America, more interventions, more economic sanctions, the same old song dance for Latin America. It's the same thing we've been reporting on since we've been talking about it. Every country, it's the same exact story.
And a country that Joe Biden once said it's paraphrasing here, could sink into the ocean or rise up, and the world would be better off for it. Haiti, which has been in turmoil since before its inception, I think every week now I credit the Revolutions podcast. I know, and they really should. I got to call Mike Duncan and see if they'd be on the show or something, because the guy's like awesome. But he does a Revolutions series on Haiti, and it's known to revolutionaries and those of us that look like I guess smile upon a revolution like that as the only successful slave uprising in the history of the world. But the truth is, I don't know that they really ever won that uprising. It came it came at a huge cost. And while it's to be commended, and I think people rising up against such horrible oppression is to be commended, the reality in Haiti is that it's never been a peaceful political scene, man, and it's been a violent political scene 300 years running, and
and so like the Haitian Revolution, I believe, was 1804. It's the second revolution in Americas after the United States. Obviously a former French colony, but unlike the United States, Haiti was an actual revolution. It was a revolution that was led by Black Haitians, many of which were formerly enslaved people who killed the colonizers and threw them from the island. Since then, unfortunately, they have had to pay. They're the ones paying reparation French, right? For over however long they've had to pay the French billions, basically as extortion, so that the French wouldn't come back and invade them. But this is what I want to say about the Haitian Revolution. Again, it was a real revolution. The American Revolution, despite the name we've given it, is not a revolution. A revolution is a change in power, land reform, economic changes in domestic and foreign policy. The American Revolution was, we're getting rid of the king and everybody's going to stay in control, right? We have Shays Rebellion and Sam Adams, the guy who makes the delicious beer. He hated Daniel Shay, the rebellion, because he says, well, so it was okay to rebel against the king, but you can't rebel against us. We're a democracy, right? The American Revolution was an anti-colonial struggle. We were very much pawns in the French and British international war, but it was not a revolution. It was the same people in control before and after. Haiti was very different.
They were completely different. Yeah, completely different. But I think they were both.
It wasn't a revolution.
No, I think it was. It was a revolution. I don't want to. I'll argue with you on that point. I will say they were completely different revolutions. They're the evolution of the revolution. Not to try to sound corny or anything, but came from a very different kind of support. I mean, you had a bunch of slave owners in one country and slaves in another as the foundation. So that aspect. But I mean, you're tossing off one system for another, right? I don't know that I could say it wasn't a
an
revolution.
anti-colonial struggle. We were still very much a capitalist society. In the North, it was very much capitalist driven. In the South, it was still very much plantations. Like, life didn't really change for the average American colonist and then citizen before and after the revolution. I mean, but like, yeah, I don't want to get bogged down with that though. Maybe that's a conversation for another day, though.
I mean, we talk. I mean, I don't talk a lot about the Haitian Revolution in detail, but as I learn more about it, and it's a very unique. There were just very unique circumstances comparatively to, and that resulted. So anyway, but like I said, like you said, they were forced to pay these bribes to France. We have interfered in their politics as we interfere in everybody's politics.
For hundreds of years, we've been doing
hundreds of years. I believe it was Hillary Clinton who helped the former regime, and that didn't play out too well. And now we have a guy who just before his murder had gotten an endorsement from the United States. We supported his, he was going to stay in power for, I believe, another year, although he was pretty much ruling autocratically at this point. But his claim was that he had another year in office, and the United States said, yeah, that's cool. We got your back. You stay in there for another year. And a couple of weeks later, his body was riddled with bullets and his wife was on life support. So
yeah, they 12 times. They broke his arm and they pulled out his eye. They tortured him before they killed him.
Oh,
yeah. They tortured him.
That's terrible. And so arrests have been made. Now, I guess we had a little conversation in preparation for this, and I took some time to look back over the history of political assassinations versus non-political assassinations, personal grudges. And that theory has been espoused a lot, that it was a business interest. It could have been some petty business interest that was involved, and just whacked them because they were going to lose money under his regime. And it kind of had the earmarkings of that. And because in particular, there was no immediate succession. There was no point somebody coming up, okay, he's dead, I'm the president now. And there was some debate because I believe a judge who should have taken over just recently passed away from COVID. So that line of succession was very murky. And so, the initial kind of analysis was like, okay, this is some kind of mobster kind of business type hit. And it's kind of lined up for me. Although now they're saying that some of these mercenaries were involved with a doctor out of Miami, who may have been plotting to try to come up with the president. So stories are changing. The rumor mill is flying, but I don't think we'll know the truth on this for a generation or so. These kinds of things.
I don't know. I mean, this doctor in Miami, I understand it's dubious. I don't really know if he's Haitian or Haitian American. His name is Christian and all. I don't know. Basically, he's the guy he's accused of being the mastermind of the attempt on president. It's Jovenel Moise. He's been he's the one charged by Haitian police for the murder of the president. Now, there is a video of him online saying that he would make a good president of Haiti. But first of all, the video is in English. And apparently, from what I've heard and what I understand, there are a number of those types of videos about Haiti, people criticizing the president, people saying that they want to be president. So I've heard questions around about maybe this guy be a patsy, he'd be the face of the organization. I've heard that it was claimed that he said he was on a mission from God. If that's the case, he might be mentally ill. But we're talking 30 of these mercenaries, right?
Yeah.
$3,000 a month, plane ticket. Somebody has to feed them, energy, water. So question, how can this doctor / businessman or failed businessman, how can he afford that? So we don't really know. The way they were able to get into the country, what I understand, businessmen and politicians in Haiti, you use private security.
And so I've heard calls. I've heard some calls for the military to get involved, which of course I don't think Biden's
Yeah,
going to be
Biden
doing that. He's
hasn't
not
done
that
that,
dumb.
so
I don't think
thankfully.
he's that dumb. I think there's no real threat of us getting involved militarily in the near future. Who knows down the line?
They
I mean, I
haven't
don't
ruled
want
it
to
out
make
though. But they have ruled it out. I mean,
no.
there's gangs talk about taking back the streets. They don't have an army,
Yeah,
right? They don't really have a
but they
military.
have talked about. I mean, but they have talked about it, and I believe that like our investigators are going to go in. So like I'm thinking, oh great, so the United States is going to go investigate who killed your president. I mean,
Well, somebody has to. Yeah.
the guy was out of Miami. I mean, this doesn't. This is gonna be murky. Like I said, I think
Yeah.
this is one of those things. Like I'll be watching a thing on the History Channel in my 80s about, and they'll be revealing things because, yeah, like you said, 30 people involved. Some people are gonna get away with shit, man. Some people may
Look,
not have been. Maybe they'll get the gunmen or something, but there's gonna be people involved that walk away
Miami,
and the
there's a
trails go
lot of
cold.
options is that coming out of Miami. You got right wing Cuba. That company was owned
yeah.
by a Venezuelan, right? So we're talking about a right wing Venezuelan. We're talking about right wing Haitians. Everyone else. I mean, these are people that legitimately want to overthrow governments. We know where they are, right? Whether it's Haiti, whether it's Cuba, whether it's Venezuela, whether it's Peru, or it's Bolivia. It's the same story. We know where these people are. Their power base, one of their power bases is Haiti. These are the people that think that they're the ones that should be running these countries, and they have the money, and the power. They have access to mercenaries. These mercenaries they bought their tickets in Colombia. They flew from Colombia to Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic, and then they drove right into Haiti.
Yeah, the chaos, it benefits the moneyed interests, and I think what you're seeing, and I think all this. I mean, you can even listen to the conversation we've had on and
The shock
how many
doctrine.
points and how much. Yeah, and it really does, and this is a really great example, well, great example, but a prime example of hyper capitalism, hyper neoliberal type capitalism, keeping society in complete disorder while making all boatloads of money. And like you said, money going off the
got to be.
And this is something. Yeah.
If you are a, we'll just say a mining company in Haiti, you have private security, well armed, well paid private security that's going to protect your interests. Right? Money is not going to stop. Right? Here's the deal: if American businesses or foreign businesses were truly affected, we would be hearing about military intervention.
Libertarians, pay attention, because that's your dream, isn't it? Everybody having their own private security, and little fiefdoms, and this is. But I mean, it's when we talk about ideologies and ideological differences, I think libertarians should pay heed. Haiti,
this is what you get.
Has a very, very weak government, a very, very weak central government, a violently, like I said, a violent political. This isn't a condemnation of the Haitian people who work hard and produce goods and services and feed their families. It's a condemnation of the political system, that basically doesn't really exist or have any kind of real, grip on the country whatsoever. And everybody can kind of just do what they want. That's what I believe libertarians call freedom. It's not freedom. It's not freedom to live in a violent society where people are running around in armed gangs representing corporations. It's not freedom.
Yeah,
I mean,
President died to run on supermarkets, right? We thought it was bad because toilet paper shortage. The president died in the poorest country in the right. They put the country on lockdown and martial law. Like the Haitian people that continue to suffer. And it's all the suffering they like. I mean, I feel like we've talked about this in history and like the former Duvalier regime and just the torture and the organized terror and how they kept the Haitian people in line. It's the same story throughout America, Haiti, Brazil, Cuba, Venezuela. It's people being exploited and being violently assaulted when they try to organize.
They need that. When we were talking earlier about that, the political freedom and the different kinds of freedom that are out here, they really need that land and liberty side of that freedom. They really need that to be able to have, some claim to their own work and their own labor and their own property. And, I don't dictate to other societies how that exactly works, but it's clear that, the people that make up everyday Haitian society are not reaping the benefits of being a part of that society. They're not making the money that comes out of these, it's foreign interest, it's small, powerful interests. It's always people parachuting in, whether it be this doctor who may be a patsy and may be guilty of absolutely nothing other than putting up some weird YouTube videos, quite honestly. We don't know yet. Or whether it be Wyclef Jean, who created a fake fund to help them out with natural disasters. I mean, Haiti had just been taken advantage of by foreign interests since, before its inception. And I do hope that someday some sanity comes to that place, but it's not going to come at the hand of investigators from the United States government. It's not going to come through foreign military intervention. If anything, it's going to come from those foreign interests taking their hands off of it and allowing the people of Haiti to create a society that they're happy with. We just don't have, we don't have the capacity or the capability to leave shit alone. And it's just the hardest thing for us to do is to leave shit alone.
If there's resources, if there's money to be made, a market sold to, that will, and I remember in college, Jean-Bertrand Aristide, the president, was overthrown. He got overthrown by Clinton. It's the same story. These people are democratically elected. Washington elites, business elites decide they don't like them. They wave their magic wand. That's what happens. Look, it could be the Mexican Revolution. It could be World War I, Blackjack Pershing, in an act of war leading soldiers across the Mexican border in a failed effort to find Pancho Villa. It could be Americans stirring up dissidents too, but it's the same playbook. That's how empire works.
I want to thank you for joining us. We're sorry to everybody that might have been expecting Africa or other guests. Africa had some, I don't know, it was tech problems or stuff, but he couldn't make it to the show tonight. But thankfully, I got my comrade Christian Perez back there supporting us. Before we head off for the week, we will be back next week here on NJR Live next Wednesday at 8 p.m. We'll be back talking to you again. But before we go, Chris, you got anything you want to plug?
No, I just want to say, check out my YouTube channel. Started at least a couple videos. Check me out on Twitter. I'm trying to be more active on Twitter. I ruffled some feathers on Facebook with my Cuba post a couple of days ago, so that was cool. Got a lot of people sharing it. I had some people that were outraged. A lot of straw man arguments, but I would say check out that Dan Labat's article. As anti-capitalists in the United States, we'd be defending the Cuban Revolution. Don't gotta love it, but the real world, I think we should be supporting the Cuban Revolution. Other than that, I just want to say thanks again, Brian. Thanks to our fans. Please donate. Please get involved.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christian, and thanks all of you out there to tune in. I like to just sum up tonight's conversation by, look, if you've listened to the show, if you've heard me talk, because I hate the black and white. I hate the good and evil. I hate this guy's a bad guy and that guy's a good guy, because in politics, they're pretty much all bad guys. So what we really have to do is have nuanced conversations and talk about, what a revolution looks like for real, because I think that our media out there right now and CNN and MSNBC and all this garbage out there just isn't working. And that's why we're here, man. So like Christian said, you can donate. You can become a part of our editorial board by going to www.njrevolutionradio.com. If you join in the next week or two, I will send you a light ring. One of these things. Look, you're going to see how good I look. Watch. And then I don't look good anymore. I'm dark, but the light ring helps you look good. One of these little thingies here. I'll send you one of those so you can look good on your Zooms. Or, some of our editorial board members come on the show and appear with us, like Christian Perez, like Felicia, who will be on next week doing her monthly movie review. We're going to be talking about In the Heights. It's a musical. I'm not a big fan of musicals, but I love this because Felicia, she likes to, she said, I'll pick something else. I said, no, you make me watch stuff that I wouldn't normally pick out. It takes me out of my comfort zone.
Wait, what are you going to watch?
Expand my In the Heights is the name. It's a musical.
No.
Oh, no. Okay, so we're going to watch this. Hey, it's her choice. I mean, my thoughts
Hey.
on it, I'm going to go into it open-minded. That's what I'm going to do. I'm
going to say this. Look, my wife and I, we butt heads on Lin-Manuel Miranda. I don't like Guy. I don't like his politics. I don't like Hamilton. But before Hamilton came out, my mom introduced me to In the Heights. I do like In the Heights, right? Not to say I like it. I don't like it.
Okay.
I like the idea of it, right? The movie had some problems, but music is good. It's about an immigrant community, Latinos, Dominicans, and whatnot.
Right.
But that's the kind of art I want to see. Musicals like Kinky Boots. That is the art I want to see, you know. But Kinky Boots is cool. Like, but the idea behind Kinky Boots is good. It's a factory. They should have been a co-op. But Kinky Boots is the kind of art I want to see. And they left wing art, like it's boring. It's great. It was a hit movie. Cyndi Lauper did music. It was cool. But like Hamilton, I'm a fan of Miranda and Hamilton. But I mean, she's gonna do musical. I want to hear what she has to say.
I'm a fan of musicals, live musicals. I've had the great fortune to see a couple of Broadway plays in my life. If you haven't seen Cabaret, I mean, it's just an amazing story. And I could say Monty Python's
I saw Avenue Q.
Avenue Q was fantastic. My wife and I went for one of our anniversary dinners. We went and saw Avenue Q. So I love musicals. I love live theater. I love plays. I love concerts.
I like opera.
I've always kind of had a problem watching musicals on screen, only because I think it's like this immersive. When people start breaking out in song and dancing without the 3D effect and the kind of ambiance of a theater, it doesn't translate.
People, yeah.
But I'm keeping my mind open, and I can't wait to watch this movie. And we'll be back next week, Wednesday night at 8 p.m. We're going to do our movie review. We're going to look around the world of social justice and activism. We're going to fight for all those things that are involved with social revolution here in the United States of America. We're working towards, trying to make it a better place to live. So thanks a lot. Support us. Donate www.NJ Revolution Radio. And until next week at 8 p.m., this is Brian Powers, and I want to remind everybody out there that the police can quit their jobs. Good night, everybody.
Thrown against the car, handcuffed, and that's what happened last night.
The police kicked in the door, shot him twice in the chest, and died.
Before you knew it, we had 500 families. We had over 100 volunteers calling us. We were on the phone constantly.
And I can't get it. And I got one police department telling me they don't know who's in charge. I got another police department here. Everybody's got a gun, and nobody knows who's in charge. Did anybody figure out who's in charge yet? Is there anybody in charge here? Any police officer in charge? Are you in charge? I can't find anybody in charge. That's the problem.